It's been 1 year since my first video on this topic, and The Sopranos is still one of the funniest TV shows I've ever watched. And after watching it for another time in that period, I can confirm that this show has the most rewatch value than any other show ever made. You know, I'm actually starting to feel like part of the crew. Gabagool, over here. Let me be clear on this. The Sopranos is not a mafia show. It's a comedy. It's not a show that's plot driven, but it's focusing on the characters. And I think the characters in this show are perfect. Not in a way that they are great people because they're rotten, every single one of them, but they're amusing, funny.
Funny how?
A perfect representation of that is Livia Soprano. Yup, you heard it right. The slimy old bitch is funny as hell. I wanted to punch her in the throat just as much as the next guy, but when I'm looking at her from a comedic perspective, she got some jokes. Really dark, sometimes racist jokes, but jokes nonetheless. And you could see the foundation of her character in the pilot episode when she's driving in the car with Junior. She's saying how Tony doesn't care about her and is locking her into a nursing home because he's hoping she would die faster. That's not a good nursing home if you ask me. And then she starts crying about her late husband Johnny and says that he was a saint. Funny enough, I don't remember you telling him that when he was alive. And then she says it again in the next episode when Carmela invited her to live with them. I guess he must be a saint if she's saying it that consistently. She's definitely not using it as a form of manipulation. When I look at Livia Soprano, I wouldn't say that she was a rude, manipulative bitch, but more of a realist. Like that one time Tony came to visit her in the nursing home. Tony knocked in classic Tony fashion until Livia opened the door. This lovely lady walked by the room and asked Livia if she's playing bingo today. Livia answered in a polite way, even calling her honey. When the lady turned around, Livia whispered to Tony,
"You know, she's a degenerate gambler."
I don't agree with that though. Playing bingo, that's amateur stuff. Melly, I got a spot for you at this poker tape. I'm sure Tony has a few boxes of ziti with your name on it. Livia was also a great friend. One time she drove her friend to her house and then ran her over because she needed some back adjustment. And don't get me started on how of a great grandma she was. Like this lesson she gave to AJ, and I quote, "Don't expect happiness. You won't get it. People let you down. It's all a big nothing. What makes you think you're so special?" You can really see in AJ's eyes how much he admires her granny. Definitely not visibly traumatized or something. No. This is the look of pure admiration and gratefulness for the advice. All in all, Livia was a lovely lady that brought joy to this world. While we're at the topic of great and funny people, we gotta talk about the man, the myth, the legend, Junior. This man is so loyal that he came to the funeral of his first handjob. The funeral of the lady that gave him the first handjob, I should say. He even said it proudly in front of her dead body.
God, what am I saying at this poor woman's wake?
The prime example to show how much of a man Junior really is when he said to Pussy, "We don't run, it's embarrassing." Or ran away when he saw the feds on Jackie Jr.'s funeral. You may think that that's a bad thing, but it just showed his character. He's not afraid of getting embarrassed. Well man, he was also a master in the kitchen, especially when it comes to making milkshakes. Look at the technique. Pours the milk, puts the lid on, ready to blend. With his expert eyes, he realizes that there's not enough milk. Pours a little more, intentionally doesn't put the lid back on for better taste, and blends. He then cries because he never realized his dream of becoming a famous chef. Just 30 seconds later, he said one of the most iconic lines in the whole show. Tony just came in the right time to taste his uncle's milkshake.
What?
And he tells Junior that he looks better. Junior surprisingly doesn't believe Tony and says,
If you're gonna lie to me, tell me there's a broad waiting in the car who wants to tongue my ball.
Even though it's wrong to laugh at a senile man, this scene where he thinks that he and Bobby are on TV is straight up comedy. To his defense, if I was an old man with dementia, I'm sure I would think the same. I mean, just look at them. They're like fucking brothers. Junior also had a way with his words. Like the time he slipped in the shower, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was,
Sisters, cunt!
Since I'm making a video on funny Sopranos characters, I just can't make it without including the funniest man that ever lived, Paulie Walnut. He was in the true meaning of that phrase, a wise guy. Here he explains to Tony that snakes have both male and female sex organs, and that's the reason people call someone they don't trust a snake. Because how can you trust a guy that can literally go fuck themselves? Then this stupid guy Tony says that the snake term comes from Adam and Eve. Wise guy Paulie called me and logically explains that snakes were fucking themselves long before Adam and Eve showed up. You can then see Paulie's famous nod of confirmation. Yep, another fool outplayed. The man is so funny he needs to tell his jokes twice. Like the blowjob joke. Paulie asks Sil if he remembers his first blowjob. Sil says of course. Then Paulie hits him with a classic. How long did it take for the guy to come? He then repeats the joke to Tony while Tony politely listens to the joke for the second time. This show is so funny because the characters are so messed up. Like that scene where Furia cries and tells Tony he's crying because of his father. Tony says, "You gotta get over it." And the next scene shows Tony crying about a horse. This sums up Tony in literally 15 seconds. A similar situation happened when he came to the hospital to pick up Valentina. He then breaks up with Valentina. She's obviously devastated and states that she's gonna kill herself. Tony then answers the phone call right after she says that. And that OG phone call ringtone is what makes this twice as funny. You know when Tony got his ass beat by the UFC heavyweight champion Bobby Bacalieri? Well, the next morning Chrissy calls him to wish him a belated happy birthday. What does Tony do? Hangs up in the middle of Chrissy's sentence. Poor guy. Still funny though. I'm starting to think that this Tony guy isn't that great. Is this show intentionally this funny or did the fans make it so? And after rewatching the show here and then, I'm sure it's intentional. Just have a look at the scene where Paulie throws the TV through the window. There's literally a lady on her fucking scooter just passing through. Like, why is she there if not for comedic purposes? And the best thing is, guess she doesn't even notice the TV. The writing on the show is too good. They made even the serious situations funny, but in a subtle way. You literally have to rewatch the show to catch those tiny details. It's real life comedy. In a way, it's not supposed to be funny, however, you can't help but to laugh. Same you would if you found yourself in a similar situation. That's why it's still one of the greatest TV shows ever made, with the best fan base. And I'm glad there are so many people keeping it alive. It deserves it.